Authenticity isn't a nice to have in leadership. It's a non-negotiable. In a world full of facades, only your truth is the boldest move you can make. Welcome to the Danni Vee Show, the podcast for high-performing business owners, leaders, and entrepreneurs ready to lead with elegance, courage, and radical responsibility. I'm Danni Vee, and I'm here to help you strip away the fluff and step fully into your power at the boardroom and in business. In each episode, we'll share no-nonsense insights and real conversations on what it takes to show up authentically, make tough decisions with grace, and create impact at the highest levels. So if you're ready to own your voice and lead on your terms, you're in the right place. So let's dive in. Welcome back to the Danni Vee Show. What an exciting episode we have today. If you didn't catch last week's episode, it was a solo episode really diving deep into what 2026 can mean for you in business and in leadership. So jump over there if you haven't heard it. But today in this episode, I'm joined by Annelise McCarthy, the founder of Her Speaking Coach, for a deeply aligned conversation on confidence, voice, and identity-led leadership. Annelise brings powerful expertise in helping women own their message and speak with clarity and confidence. What makes this conversation so special is how closely our missions are aligned. We're both passionate about supporting women to step out of self-doubt, stop dimming their light, and lead from a place of self-trust and inner authority. Together, we explore what it really takes to be seen, to speak from truth, and to lead in a way that feels grounded, authentic, and sustainable. So let's get into it. Welcome to the Danni Vee Show. It's so wonderful to have you here. I was talking too much before we even got started.
I'm so grateful to be here, Danni. Thanks for having me.
Yes, I'm so excited. We actually decided to hit record because we were talking too much before we came on here. So who knows what we're going to be speaking about, but it's such a pleasure and honor to have this incredible person in our space and just to hear all your wisdom. So today, what I want to start with, Annelise, is what you do is you really help women show up powerfully when they speak. And I've had the experience of hearing you speak and then bringing in the audience. I actually stood up on stage and was brave with you and then fell apart, but that's okay. That's what you do. Even though there's that. And it was so interesting for me because it's what I help women do, like obviously not speaking, but being confident on stage and things like that. When I speak about myself, I find it really difficult afterwards. So I just start shaking. So something within my nervous system starts happening because consciously I'm fine, I'm speaking, but then my body starts shaking and everything like that. And so I guess my first question for you is that when you think about most leaders and entrepreneurs and business owners, when they're speaking about themselves, what comes up? Like what really stops them from being confident that you've noticed?
Oh, what a great starting question. Firstly, I have to acknowledge, yes, you did come up on stage, and I need everyone who's listening to know this wasn't a, hey, Danni, come up on stage with me. It was such a broad acknowledgement of I have, 3 spots. I want 3 women to come up on stage, and you just beelined, and that says so much about the woman that you are. So yeah, before I
thank you.
answer your question, I just want to start by saying it's a real honor and privilege to be interviewed by you. And I'm really excited for our chat because I have a lot of respect for you and the woman that you are. It's really interesting with what you've just shared. I have a term that, I don't know if people already call it this, but I call it the Audacity Hangover. And I have noticed that when women especially step into their audacity or their authority or their assertiveness, we get a hangover afterwards. And that hangover is guilt, shame, frustration, embarrassment, resentment. It's like all of this shit comes up after we step forward and assert ourselves and say, I'm here, this is what I do, this is who I am. And one of the reasons I think this happens is because first and foremost, if we actually take the analogy of a hangover, if you aren't somebody that drinks a lot of alcohol, if you go out and have a really big night, you're going to feel awful the next day, right? Now, coming from a woman who technically doesn't drink that much, this is probably a very bad analogy to use. But the term basically means that if you aren't used to promoting yourself or advocating for yourself or, speaking about what you do in a really proactive way versus reactive, because a reactive advocation is when someone says, oh, and like, what do you do? You go, oh, oh, I do this and, and I help this. That's a reactive advocation. Proactive advocation is when you are asserting yourself before you're asked to, and it's letting people know, I'm here, this is who I am, this is what I do, I'm stoked, I'm excited, whatever the energy or vibe might be. I'm a big
Mm.
believer that the more that we proactively advocate for ourselves, we have the audacity, we have the authority, and we speak and we share it, that hangover becomes less and less and less and less because you're so used to doing it more and more and more and more. So for a lot of leaders, business owners, C-suite executives, like people that I coach, I think one of the reasons that we have this connotation with advocating for ourselves and asserting our worth is because we don't do it enough. And so then when we
Mm.
do it, we're like, that felt really uncomfortable. I don't know if I like
Uh-huh.
that. And then so we're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't do that again because that just felt like crap. And then we build that kind of negative relationship with it and only do it when we need to. The challenge or invitation I would have here then is, well, how can you do that more when you're not asked to or expected to? And it's
Mm.
really asserting yourself as often as you possibly can. How can you let people know who you are at all times? And this might be, being really proactive with showing up on your social media channels and being consistent with using your voice in the way that you advocate for yourself. Just before we jumped on this recording, we talked about door knocking and how, like, I've been raised in a family of sales. And so my dad, he spent over 20 years of his career cold knocking, cold calling. And I think I grew up with that mindset of, oh, okay, so I can't expect anybody to know anything about me unless I physically pick up the phone or beat down the door and let them know.
Mm.
It's more of a traditional tactic, but as well, I mean, it is pretty scary to pick up the phone and be like, hey, don't know if you guys are needing any training of X, Y, and Z, but this is what I do. They're probably going to say no, and you're probably going to get rejected. But the most powerful thing about this activity is the rejection doesn't reflect your worth or your value. And rejection, we no longer attach it to ourselves as meaningful. It just becomes part of the process of running a business and advocating for yourself. It's like, well, people aren't going to like it. People aren't going to want it. People are going to have an issue with how I do it, what I charge, whatever it might be. Great. Let's rewire, reset, go again, go again, go again. So,
Mm.
long story short, it's a muscle. And I think you just build it over time.
And I love that idea of rewiring because, as you know, that's what I help my clients with, rewiring their brains. But also, like, I think a big part of that is that fear of rejection that you were speaking about, especially being in Australia. We were actually just talking about this before too, is the tall poppy syndrome, especially for women. And I'm really passionate about that because my career, I've been in business for over 25 years and I really have not had support from other women until recently. And that's because I thought that that's the way it was. And, the way that you're saying that audacious hangover, I think I get that from when, you'd speak about what you were doing and then you just feel like you'd have to shrink yourself back down. So, and then you'd shrink yourself and then you'd shrink yourself and then you wouldn't really know. And I have a lot of clients that have shrunk themselves down to fit into like a certain circle or whatever like that. And when you notice that happening, because you would definitely have clients like that in your world that would be shrinking themselves down, what advice will you give them to really start, I guess, being brave enough to do that door knocking, being brave enough to say, hey, this is who I am and this is what I do?
Great question. Well, I think we have to start with the conversation of if the opposite of shrinking is expanding or, being in your big,
Yeah.
what does that look like for you and what does that bring up for you? Because I think a lot of people, and not just women, but a lot of people shrink themselves, not because they actually consciously make a decision to do it, but because psychologically or physiologically it just feels safer. And because of that, we go so much of our lives without advocating for ourselves, asserting ourselves, taking up space, because we're used to playing this part of being, quote unquote, the small, shrunk version of me, which, if we are tangibly seeing what that looks like, it shows up in your body language. It shows up in the words that you use, the non assertive fluff that you speak with. Does that make sense? Is that okay? Can I just, oh, sorry, did I? And when we
Mm.
show up with this mindset and this mentality, we're always seeing ourselves as an imposition or as somebody who doesn't fully belong in the space that we're in. So if the
Mm.
opposite of that is an expansion and a bigness and a taking up of space, if that's something you want to step into, before even tools or strategies of how to do that or what that looks like, you have to identify, what does that look like for you, and
Mm.
how can we position it in a way that feels safe for you to step into? Because if your body, or if in your mind you've always perceived, for example, really big conversation piece I'll always have with women I work with is this idea of being seen. And it's not that they're not brilliant. It's not that they don't know what they're talking about. It's not that they're not experienced or they don't know their stuff. It's the thing of, but if I raise my hand to say something, all eyes turn to me. I am now seen.
Yes.
And when I am seen, there is an expectation. There is a fear of failure. There is a fear of judgment. Like, it brings up so much. And so if we can start by dibble, dabble, wibble, wabbling in how can we allow ourselves to be seen more often for who we are, not just what we know, that's
Mm-hmm.
how we start to shift the needle.
Yeah, and really, I guess that who we are is so important, isn't it? Like actually being, and then also then when you do introduce yourself, actually describing who you are, not what you do.
Yeah.
So, because for me, for a really long time, because I do so many different aspects, I didn't know how to describe what I did. Because how can you describe what you do when there's different levels of modalities and different like organizations? So, we both work with corporate and businesses. So how do you do, it's kind of like, how do I say what I do? So until you actually understand who you are and this, I guess, the value that you bring to the world, it's really difficult to speak up about yourself, isn't it?
And that's a challenging question in of itself. I even imagine if I attended a networking event and someone came to me and said, I don't want to know what you do. I want to know who you are." I'd be like, "Fuck." Uh, right. So I like chocolate. I really do. That to me is enjoyable. I have two sisters. Like, it's actually quite a hard question to answer.
It really is.
I know there's a lot of people that talk very passionately about this, about like, let's scratch the idea of what you do, and let's embody who you are and talk about that passionately. I think it's a wonderful invitation to entertain, but I think we also need to have compassion that in the reality of how our society is constructed, that's actually a really hard conversation to have.
Yeah.
Because our value is based on the value we bring to society, and the work that we do is such a big part of that. And God forbid you're a business owner that loves what you do, then your whole life becomes the work that you do. So it can actually be quite challenging to separate the two. But I think when it comes to really knowing who you are, and I suggested this with the talk that you saw me do in Brisbane. I'm a really big fan of buying conversation card decks,
Yes. I
and
really loved that when you
yeah,
shared that.
yeah, and doing it with yourself and answering the question deck with yourself. I have learned so much about me through doing that activity. And I've done it quite regularly with different types of decks. One of my favorites is the "We're Not Really Strangers" conversation card, like a red
Okay.
box. I know that Stephen Bartlett just released one with his Diary CEO brand. So there's a lot of different conversation cards that you can explore with. But I think it's a really special way of being able to dive deeper into understanding, oh yeah, like, how do I feel about this? What do I fear, and what are my insecurities, and when do I feel the most loved, and what do I need out of it? Because they're actually quite big questions to sit with.
Yeah.
So for me, as somebody who happens to love what she does, and I will happily talk about it 24/7, that's one of the ways that I can stay connected to Annelise as a woman, not just Annelise as a businesswoman.
Yeah, exactly. Like really knowing who you are, because you can get lost when
Yeah.
you are really passionate about what you do, because then that becomes who you are. And then those other little things. I just love that card deck idea. And I did actually go out and buy. I do have a few because of my facilitation, but I went out and bought some others. And I'm gonna get the don't have
Okay.
the "We're Not Really Strangers," so I'm gonna get that. I think that's really fun because I like getting to know who I am, because I had become a stranger to myself, through so many like different variations of my life and things like that. So that was I loved everything you said when you spoke. So that was one of the big takeaways for me though.
Oh, and you know what I love that you've just shared is you just said, and I think that's really fun. And
Yeah.
I think this is a big piece around self-discovery and building a relationship with yourself that needs to be talked about more because
Yes.
we talk about therapy and journaling and all these quite like deep, heavy things that we invest in to get to know who we are. But then the journey to self-discovery becomes quite heavy and it
Yes.
becomes quite, confronting and triggering and challenging. And although it's absolutely a necessary part of the journey, and anybody that's gone through any type of healing will easily recapitulate and agree with that. However, it also gets to be fun and it gets to be lighthearted and it gets to be a bit more chill. And I think I've just found in my own personal experience, the conversation cards are a really easy way to them do that.
Yeah, yeah. And one of the things like how you talk about journaling, one of the advice that I give to my clients is to make it light as well. So it's not always this heavy thing. So in the mornings, every morning when I journal, I just write, I choose to be. So I set my intention for the day. And so it might be, I just choose to be present. Or I choose to, if I'm speaking on stage, every time I speak on stage that day, I say, I choose to be magnetic in my presence and influential when I speak. So then I'm setting that intention. And then so whatever I want out of that day. So, I want to get through whatever tasks, or it might just be, I want to relax. So then you're setting that intention and it just makes it so simple
Mm.
to actually create change instead of, like you said, it being like, oh my God, I have to do this and I have to journal like 5 times. And, I was never there for that.
Mm.
I really wanted to find a simple, light way because especially when you start going on that healing journey, everything's so heavy already. So how can you lighten the load while you heal?
Yeah, I've
Mm.
just written down I choose to be. I think that's incredibly powerful. And I love that as such a simplistic intention for the beginning of the day. And it's such a
Mm.
beautiful way to set up how you show up and the energy you show up with, which is such a big part of memorability and connection and magnetism. So I
Oh,
love, love, love that. Thank you for sharing. That's really
oh,
special.
you're so welcome. You're so welcome. So, well, let's talk about self leadership because that's something I'm really passionate about. And I'd love to know when and if you remember a time where you've really had to step into self leadership
Mm.
before you've led others, where you've recognized, no, this isn't working because I'm not leading myself.
Mm. Oh my gosh, your questions are delicious, Danny. This is
Thank you.
amazing. Man, such a great question. So, the first one that instantly comes to mind, and I imagine if I had more time to really think, there might be a more profound, significant answer. But the one that immediately comes to mind, I have gone on a very big journey of self trust and learning to trust in myself.
Mm.
It is a massive part of what I coach and what I teach. But about 4 years ago, I noted a very big disruption between I'm gonna ask you, have you ever done a coaching call where you give advice to a client and you're like, "Fuck, that's good advice. I should start doing that."
Happens often, yeah.
Yeah. Like, "Damn, that was actually really clever and intellectual of me. Maybe I should start doing that too." About 4 or 5 years ago, I noted in of myself that there was a disconnect with the advice I was giving, and I wasn't coming from a place of integrity with my
Mm.
coaching because I was very good at giving advice. And I think from a young age in my family, I was prided as the one who was always level headed and, emotional and could sit and listen for long periods of time. But I wasn't actually leading my teachings. And so this journey started with building self trust. And that manifested in many different ways. I took on a lot of different fear challenges. For example, I cut all my hair off at one point and I
Oh,
had to learn how to love myself without having my long hair, which was a big piece of my identity. I didn't realize I attached myself to so significantly. The idea
mhm.
that my beauty and my worth as a woman was attached to having beautiful long hair.
That's
So cut all
interesting.
my hair off. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Ugh, brought up so much. Oh my God.
Mm.
Mirror work was a very, very
Yeah.
big of my journey, which I imagine that you know a lot about.
Mhm.
Very, very powerful. Physical challenges, I started doing things that really scared the shit out of me. So it could go from something quite, common like skydiving to, I did a challenge with my friends where we walked 100 kilometers in 24 hours. And these were things that,
24 hours.
yeah, I don't want to do it again. Don't talk to me about it. I don't even want to conversation. My hips are still recovering 3 years later. Uh, And these aren't things that I suggest, oh, you have to go out and do these things. But I know myself as a woman, and I know what drives me. And what drives me is setting a goal and doing it. Like, I know of myself, I have that blend of femininity and masculinity where I have a masculine drive in me and I have a discipline in me that when I turn it on, it's fucking on. I just know that about myself. So when it came to developing like trust and building trust, those were big elements of the strengths of my personality I knew I could lean on of, okay, if I set a goal, I want to build enough self-respect and self-discipline that I will fulfill that goal that I have set, regardless of how scary it is. And a big one for me was when I made the decision to move to a different city. I packed up my life. I moved to Melbourne and I lived there for 2 years. I didn't know anybody when I moved. I had no family there, had no existing friendships there. And that was absolutely terrifying. But it was the greatest teaching for me because it taught me to ferociously trust and rely on me. And now it's really special because I feel like I know everything about Annelise. Like I feel like I know this woman so intimately, so deeply. I have so much love for her. I'm so proud of myself. And that's really special because I feel many years ago, there was a disconnect between the woman that I was versus the woman I was showing up as. And now
Yes.
I feel like there's a lot more alignment and synergy. I'm 100% definitely not there. And I'm probably going to be fucking working on this for the rest of my life, as we all do. But I do feel genuinely like I wake up and go to sleep knowing I lived today as Annelise and I led
Oh,
today as Annelise. And that's a really special feeling.
yeah, I really love that. And I love that you're speaking about self-trust because later this afternoon, I'm running a workshop for a corporation that I'm doing a program, like a 12-month program in. And it's been coming up like self-leadership and self-trust.
Mm,
And what I'm going to be speaking about is that self-trust and when you break that, and that goes hand in hand with how you're speaking about with your discipline as well, right? So the way that I see it is that, for example, if you wake up and if you decide that you're going to do a workout in the morning and then you wake up and you don't do it, you're breaking trust with yourself. If you say you're going to go and do 5 reach outs this week and you don't do those 5 reach outs, you break trust with yourself. And then you're teaching your unconscious mind that you can't trust yourself. So it's really powerful to go through that journey to learn how to trust yourself. And that's discipline, exactly what you're talking about. Have the discipline to show up for yourself first. Yes. Oh, that's magic.
There's so much here. I have a tattoo of trust. This is how much this
Oh,
means to me. It's been a very significant part of my journey, building self-trust, building self-respect, building evidence. But it's interesting actually, because there is a flip side to this coin. And I want to bring it into the conversation to also get your thoughts on this, given you're an expert in this topic. So part of my journey was recognizing, yes, I have the discipline, but that discipline also led me 2 years ago to burnout. And
mhm.
I would push myself too hard and I would hustle too much and I would actually burn myself out very quickly. I would set challenges that were too big or too unrealistic. And there was a level of ego that came into the equation when building that self trust. Very interestingly, one of my coaches at the time introduced me to the work of Kristen Neff. And if you don't know who Kristen
Mm,
Neff is, she is one of the leading experts in self compassion. So
mm.
Kristen Neff speaks about kindness to self and the yin and yang of discipline and self compassion. And I went down this really ferocious rabbit hole of, wait, so I can be disciplined, but like in a loving way.
Yes,
I can
that
set
feminine
goals.
energy.
Yes, yes, and I'd be
Yes.
so curious to get your thoughts on this because I'm like transparently, I'm still learning this balance and it's still something I'm trying. I feel like this year's the first year. I'm like, I feel like I'm finally starting to get it, which is really exciting. But from my experience, what I'm learning is I set challenges that motivate me that I know I can do or things that are a little bit scary that I want to achieve. I build routine as a way of respecting myself and showing up for myself. But I implement self compassion by knowing that if I don't do it or if I quote unquote fail, it doesn't make me a bad person. It doesn't make
Mm,
me a failure. It doesn't mean that I'm lazy or worthless or any of the things, which is the language that I would use previously. That was my self talk, which wasn't
yeah.
constructive. So I'm really curious to hear with what you teach and how you go about this topic of self trust and building that. What does that blend of femininity and masculinity look like for you in the way that you teach it?
Yeah, absolutely. So my framework is in body. So energetics, mindset, body, ownership, which is radical responsibility, direction, which is your values, mission, and then you. And then within those pillars, there's the three aspects that you're talking about, which is self-love, self-acceptance, and self-respect. And
Mm,
with that self-trust and that self-compassion, the self-acceptance is a really big component of that. And when I'm speaking, and especially for high achieving women, we are driven and we're disciplined. So often we step into that masculine, we're driving and we're going and we're going and forgetting about actually the creativity of the feminine. So the flow. And so then when you are stepping back and slowing down, if you don't have that self acceptance, you start judging yourself.
mm,
And so then when you start hearing yourself, I'm lazy, I'm not good enough because I'm not where I need to be and things like that, that judgment is coming in because you're not accepting yourself. And so what that looks like is actually taking the time to be really kind to yourself, like you were saying. So I was actually having a conversation with a client yesterday, and she's come exponentially. Like, it's just unbelievable what she's achieved in 6 months. And I was saying to her that, you're actually shifting and changing. Like, how you said you'll challenge yourself a little bit. So as you're pushing yourself out of that comfort zone, reminding yourself to be really kind when you do fumble and when you do like not get it right straight away, and be kind to yourself about that, and just
yeah.
realize what you've actually achieved, instead of going, this isn't what I haven't achieved, this is what I have achieved so far. So shifting that and reframing it to realize, I call it catching your thought. So if you actually just catch it and then
Yes.
reframe it.
Yes, and I love the acknowledgement there around celebrating wins, big and
Mm,
small. And I think that is something I have had to learn to get better at, because
mm.
I was definitely shiny object syndrome. And as
Me
soon
the
as I think
same.
that was what's the next thing, what's the next
Yep.
thing, I have an intentional ritual now monthly where the beginning of each month it's sitting down and looking at what just happened the previous month. What
Oh,
are we
I
proud?
love that.
Yeah, and I only actually, do you know what? I only started it about 4 months ago, Danny. It's quite new for me, but a friend of mine does it, and her talking about it, I was like, "Oh, I love that. It sounds amazing." And so one of the things I'm very passionate about and I talk about all the time is solo dating. I love taking myself on solo
Mm,
dates. But now it's this monthly ritual where I'm like going out to a really nice place that makes me feel bougie and feminine. And I sit down with my diary and I look at, okay, what's happened the past 4 weeks? What am I really proud of? What did I struggle with? What wins am I celebrating? What do I want to bring into the next month? And it's become such a beautiful, almost like a wealth practice, a
yeah, like
wealth
a
of
ritual.
mindset, love, abundance. Yeah, a ritual that can really continue to build, as you were saying, that self love, that self respect, that relationship with self, which is something I'm very passionate about.
It's really important to, and that's where I guess where I was speaking about like knowing who you are, like having that relationship with yourself, because if you don't understand that, it's really difficult to thrive without burning out, like you said, or without completely judging yourself and completely ruining your self-esteem, because you're judging yourself. And then I always talk about the reticular activating system, which I'm sure you know
Yeah.
what that is. Yeah. Um, and so then you're looking around going, oh, everybody's judging me because you're judging yourself. Imagine, just imagine for a moment, to all the listeners, if you're accepting yourself and then you're then looking out thinking everybody's accepting me because that's what you
Mm,
believe. It's such
mm,
a really dynamic change. And, I'm preaching to myself because like I said, I've been going through a real struggle this probably the last 2 years with a lot of
mm,
like personal things. And it's been a real practice for me to
mm,
stay in that belief in myself. But
mm.
you dip. So then you pull yourself back out because you know the tools.
And what you've just shared is so pivotal. And thank you for your leadership in demonstrating that vulnerability, because it opens up the conversation to be able to, even as a listener to this episode, oh, so like Danny goes through that shit as well. Oh, okay. So like it's okay.
100%.
So it's beautiful to hear, and to hear you share that. And what you've said is so impactful, because I'm a big believer with the work that I do with communication, with confidence. What is internal is what is reflected external. So if you, as you mentioned, if you are judging yourself and you are doubting yourself and you are critical, that shows up in your energy, in the language that you use, in the way that you carry yourself. It is so
Yeah.
pivotal. when you are wanting to own a room or take up space or communicate effectively or powerfully or whatever it might be, if you have an internal dialogue that is negative or not constructive, or what if this happens, what if that happens, it invites that from the room. It invites the doubt. It invites the judgment. So I love that you've shared that, because I'm 100% on the same page with that.
Yeah, I agree. And I love how you're saying it invites it, because it's like I can actually feel that physical like energy coming in when you say you just come in negative energy, no, don't do that. Put your beautiful bubble of confidence around you so that negative energy can't come in. Yeah, I really
And
love that.
can we just normalize speaking positively to ourselves? I
Yeah.
honestly, I'm a bit, can we talk about this for a hot minute? I'm getting a bit pissed off here with how, like, what a cringe culture self-love has become. And when
Oh,
will see, affirmations and they're like, give me. And I'm like, honey, I know that it has been a habit for most of our life to speak unkindly to ourselves. And because of that, we have normalized the language. But can we also proclaim there is nothing normal about that language? It should not be the norm to speak unkindly to yourself, to be so critical and judgmental to yourself. And I would do anything to go back to my 14-year-old self. 14, 15,
uh,
16, very, very pivotal years for me as a young adult. And I would have given anything to just have a sit down with me now and be like, yo, you little cutie. So I can hear what's happening upstairs. Okay. And we can accept, okay, I know you want to be thinner. I know you want to get a nose job. I know you don't like this. I know you think you're tall and lanky. Like, I hear everything you're saying. Can we also agree how much harder that's making your day because of the attention and energy that you're giving to so much negativity? What would happen if instead we choose, because it takes the same amount of energy to love yourself and hate yourself, what if we actually shift the energy to, hey, I actually accept you for this, and I love you for this, and I'm proud of you for this, and it's okay as it is, and it gets to be what it is, and that's completely okay. I
yeah.
I really do believe, because attention goes where energy flows. All my energy was negativity, self-talk, because that's all I knew from the people around me. It was so normalized for women and for young women to speak unkindly to themselves. For example, picture this. Imagine you're at a sleepover. Okay. 16-year-old body. Let's come back in time. You're at a sleepover. You're with your girlfriends. Okay. There's 4 of you. And you're all taking turns in front of the mirror, like, oh, I hate this. And I wish my skin was this. And I don't.
Oh my goodness.
Imagine if you were the one that was like, no, I actually love my body and I love my skin and I love how my hair looks today. You know what's interesting about that is I already know if I was there in the moment, all the other girls would have been like, what?
Oh, she's so stuck up.
She's
Why does
so
she even
stuck
think that?
up.
Yeah.
Well, oh my God, like, she thinks that about herself. And I think we bring this young school bully mentality that we are raised in into adulthood, which
Oh,
then permeates into how we show up in our business, how we show up in our friendships, our relationships. It comes back to this culture that we talked about before of, like, women supporting women. And so I really do think that, as a quick fix to the world, if we all just made a fucking conscious effort in the morning to be like, you know what, proud of you, have a good day.
yes, I agree. I agree so deeply, and look for that positivity as well. I've got 2 examples of when I was young, I had a family member say to me, why do you have to be so happy all the time? And that affected me. Like, I shrunk myself down because I'm like, "Oh, okay, I'll change that then." And so that was, and then I moved through that. And then not that long ago in my adulthood, I had a friend and she said to me, "I just had to stop following you on social media because you're just way too happy and positive." And so that's 2 women actually saying, "Stop being so positive and happy because I can't handle it."
Do you know what's so interesting? So one of my best friends, her name's Renee Buckingham, and she is the light of my life. Her whole business is spreading joy. It's what she's known for, is spreading joy. She shared a story recently about how when she was in high school, her teacher criticized her in front of the class for being too energetic and positive and how it was disrupting the other students. And we do have this, yeah, this weird reaction to seeing positivity and seeing happiness. And I think it's also sad because if you think about, people saying hi to you in the street or saying good morning, as humans, we're like, what do they want from me?
Yes.
Like, what is this a sales strategy? Like there's such a negative connotation with kindness. And I'm
Yes.
seeing there is a lot of really incredible people who are spreading the ripple effect and are, trying to make a really conscious effort. And there's actually a woman I follow, and I forget her name, but she's brilliant. She's English, and she will, like, for example, I saw a video recently where she'll get off the tube and she'll shout out to the whole train, "Have the most beautiful day, everyone.
I love that so
I
much.
hope you have the best day." And then she'll step off the tube and everyone's like looking at her like she's crazy. I'm like, why does it have to be crazy? So I think that, look, moral of the story with this conversation, I really do believe in the power of the ripple effect. One drop of
Yes.
water creates an ongoing ripple. If you can make a conscious decision,
To
and I
yourself first.
I choose to be accepting of myself today. I choose to be positive today. I choose to be a light today. Like,
Yeah.
what a positive impact and ripple effect that would have outwardly to other people every day.
It's changed my life, that one journal prompt. It's just been incredible.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it really helps me show up in the darkest times, because I'm like, well, I can be how I feel like right now, or I can choose to be something different. It really sets the intention for anyone that's listening and thinking about it, is that, we are human. So throughout the day, you might not be like, if you say, I choose to be kind to myself today, you might not be kind, but then you remember your intention and you shift and change and start being kind. So it's really, it's very, very powerful. Very
Yeah,
powerful.
that's it. And I think there's the whole conversation around focus and what are you focusing on? And can you shift your
Yes.
focus to things that serve you in a more positive way? Because it does work.
Yep. Yep. The good old Raz. I love it.
Good old Raz. We love the
Good
Razzle
old
Dazzle.
Raz.
Yeah, we do. We do.
All right. I feel like we could talk all day, but I'm just going to ask one more question, and I'd love to hear your thoughts around. So we've already briefly mentioned my framework, Embody. And so when you think about anybody, so corporate standing up on stage, I think it's really important to bring the men into the conversation as well, because they also want to have that confidence. They also want to have that feminine energy to be able to have that creativity in their life as well. Because I do work with a lot of men that want that as well. When you think about that Embody framework, so that energetics is actually your nervous system, mindset, obvious. Body is really knowing your body. Ownership is the radical responsibility. What have I missed? Direction is your vision, mission, and values, but your internal ones. And then obviously you become authentically you. So when you think about them standing up on stage, what part of that framework would you say that to really start stepping into that authentic confidence would be the first step for them, in your view?
Oof.
Yeah, big one. Big one to
Big
finish
question.
with.
Okay. Well, first and foremost, I think every element of the framework is extraordinary and it's integral and they all intersect. And I think that's the important piece to start with here is I think in isolation, they are effective, but together they are powerful. And I think if you can approach, I know you're a holistic coach, so approaching it holistically and doing everything in cohesion is obviously going to have the most profound effect. The advice that I give to people who want to build confidence speaking on stage or using their voice is a really simple one. And it's often to a lot of people not what they want to hear because it's not fancy or sexy advice. But it's very simply, you have to accept that you have to suck as a rite of passage to getting better. And the only way that you can get better is by sucking, and you suck by building imperfect evidence. And I think that when it comes to speaking and using your voice, everybody I have worked with, it's a universal experience, men and women set outlandish expectations on ourselves that we will nail it and we will answer questions perfectly and we have to do it this way and we have to make sure that it sounds like this. And yet I will ask the person, well, when was the last time that you stood up in front of 100 people? They're like, oh, I actually, no, I haven't done it before. Like, oh, that's really interesting standards that hold on a second. So if you were traveling to Spain for the first time, would you expect yourself to speak fluent Spanish? Like, what the fuck are these expectations here? What's going on? I really do think if you have the mentality of, all right, it is a rite of passage to suck, to get better. I'm going to suck. It's going to be awkward. It's going to be imperfect. I'm going to make mistakes, but I have to commit to building imperfect evidence to get better at this skill. I think that is the biggest one. And so to answer your question bluntly with the framework, that is a mindset piece. It is a commitment, and it is a decision where you have accepted to progress imperfectly. And I find it very hard to train people who want to get from 0 to 100 in a day, because it's not possible. And I'm not a miracle worker. And if I was, I wouldn't be sitting here chatting with you. I'd be off on my private island, sitting pina coladas, living a very rich, wealthy life, right? But I don't have the magic pill. But all I do know is that, you know, in a world, particularly now that is very saturated by artificial intelligence, it's a conversation piece at every corner. If you can commit to embodying your voice and using your voice more, and it will be imperfect and it will be rusty around the edges, but what you're doing as a strategic business move is you are taking ownership of your own IP. And what you're doing is you are learning to build a skill set that you have ownership of, that you know how to use. And you can outsource as much as you want, but when it comes to outsourcing your voice and your opinions and your expertise, that's where you lose your memorability. Because if you are somebody that's relying on anything else to speak on your behalf or to outsource your ideas, whatever it might look like, you're losing the you-ness in your business, the
So
you-ness
powerful.
or imperfectness. So I think creating imperfect evidence and committing to sucking is the most important part of becoming a better speaker. And, you know, all the tools and tricks you can Google, you can research, there's an abundance of them. I'm not the only coach in the world, and you can learn them quite easily if you commit to it. But not a lot of people have the mentality and the recognition of, I will suck. And that's okay.
I love that. Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for sharing. That's really powerful. Really powerful. I wrote it down. Build imperfect evidence. I love that so much.
Why that landed. That's beautiful.
Yeah, really wonderful. Oh, thank you so much for your time, Annelise. You are such a superhuman, and I am honored to be in your space and energy once again.
Oh, thank you.
And for anybody that's wanting to follow the amazing Annelise McCarthy, all of her details will be in the show notes. She's touring next year, I see. Woo woo!
Yeah, going on tour. Yeah, we're doing 6 cities across Australia. And do you know what? I really do think I'm going to bring back Stephen to the conversation. My dad, he's a legend. And I remember when I entertained, I'll leave this as my last thing to say, when I entertained the idea of running a tour, like it's a big project. It's a really, really massive thing.
Massive.
And I remember in February this year, so this is going on 10 months ago now, I had this conversation with my dad about, hey, I think I want to run this tour. Like, I don't know, who am I to do this? And he said to me, and he was like, well, like, whose permission are you asking for? Like, what?
I love him so much.
Like, who are you waiting to tell you that you can do it? Because there's nobody else that's going to tell you that you can do it. Like, you just got to fucking do it. And I'm like, all right, Stephen, I hear you. And and that's going to be the last piece I leave you with is like, whose permission are you waiting for? Like, who are you waiting for to tell you that you can? Because you can. You just got to decide that you can. And, you know, you might have the audacity hangover. You might do it imperfectly. It might feel awkward, but you're making moves that other people aren't doing. And that's how you're going to stand out. And that's how you're going to be memorable. And I stand by that.
You're brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you so, so much. If you love what we're talking about, leave us a 5-star rating because we are fabulous. 5 stars. And I can't wait to see you next time. Thank you so much, Annelise.
Thanks, Danni.
Bye. Thank you so much for joining me on the Danni Vee Show today. I hope you're leaving this episode feeling inspired and empowered. My goal is always to bring you elegant insights with a bold impact. If you enjoyed our conversation, I invite you to subscribe to the show and leave a quick review. Your feedback not only means the world to me, but it also helps other growth-minded leaders find this community. Remember, leadership is an inside-out journey. The poise, the passion, and the purpose we cultivate within ourselves are what transform the world around us. So until next time, stay true to your vision and keep leading with the unique mix of grace and strength. Stay radiant, stay resilient, and I'll be right here cheering you on. I can't wait to hang out with you again on the next episode of the Danni Vee Show.